line grounds, how to modify your system, lines of travel itself. But we have to understand how to motivate and ground it, operate a cycle, height generate the screen lines, adaptation of flux line. So we indicate what we're doing in set position, its operation, set cycle. That puts in positional processing, how you come into your own settings, your own construct of your own set position inside, construct everything inside that projects everything outside of its earth. So we're going to go more into deeper cores of the mind of ops. So you get a true understanding how to see yourself in the projections of astral projections of yourself that you modify through. That puts you in a position of time formats, that puts you in lines of screen adaptation or travel, that puts you in all levels of astral projection of yourselves that you're indicating through. And as what you're going through, okay, is the mind of travel. Okay? So, grounding off sequence. You know what's really interesting too? What I want you guys to identify is basically how to just talk on the top of your head. Try not to think about what you're going to say, just say it. Don't try to figure things out. Just try to modify this is already done and stop calculating from this, because the filter comes from here, not here. So log into space, it's easy. General I log into space, time sequence, times calculation setting, identification code lines, identification code screens, adaptation of 007, process indication lines of flux. I got a day sequence lines of panel. I'm travels in point lines of graph. I'm directing ground sends calculation lines. I'm sending coliseums to location lines of new programming, new correlations, new travel. Directing ground send location setting. This is generally I logging out in space. Continue on and force position. Alpha Bravo, Tango Tango, Foxtrot, over and out. Okay? Without even thinking of what you're saying to yourselves. Okay? So again, it's like automatic writing. We've gone through that before. You know, you draw something out and you try to figure out what it is, and you know what it is. You see it through the painting, and the painting processes you through indications, and you start to recognize these things, and everything just becomes a position of balance. You know, saying things, you know, just out of the blue, you know, even out of the blue is out of the blue, but it's out of the mind. It's out of the box. It's out of the triangulation. It's out of position of the box. It's not position lines of setting. It's not here or there, but it's everywhere all at once. Okay? So anything you do, you can't do anything right. You can't do anything wrong, because it's already in set position in the mind itself. The mind set everything up. Now that's easy to set that volume, but what you have to process through is how to communicate to this now, because this is what alternates the confusion. This is what confuses your settings. This will get you in position problems. If you're not indicating this, you're not understanding this. It's a mind filtering system. It's a mind buffering system. It's a mind operation setting. Construct of inside projects everything outside. Okay? Okay, so let's get in position 20 minutes in frame. Okay, so I'm going to spend 20 minutes. Time box frames, centers, travels with 4 graph, communication screen, lines of 6, lines of 8 over 12. Okay? Set lines of setting. Okay? Now, setting lines of position lines of travel. Correlation and position lines of anything like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes tops. Okay, so you can start out 10 minutes and work your formation setting, ground sets, and puts all time line communications, convergence, set location of flux. So position of flux. Okay, so you go from 10 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. So that's 3 ground centers, so through 0, 0, 0. Cross line positions. So everything you create through a program from inside construction has to have 3 lines of zeros. That has 3 lines of bedding and process lines of 4 travel. Okay, that is your division line rotations into your 7-line digit number. That indicates position. That's how the XT1000 sees you. And on the light signatures, is ground lines is that position of panel. Process that indicate lines of travel communications. All right, so you can extend the longitude and latitude of its bandwidth into a ruler of communication lines of balance, of a compass. Now the compass has a high ground center, lines of sequence, a latitude, location of flux lines that travels indicates the setting, how you process the sun, and how you process the moon of indication lines of travel. Okay? So it gets really interesting when you come into the bedding system. Okay, understanding the attractions. So 20 minutes on Earth. Okay, so that's 20-minute line ground centers. I get ready to set up projections. What am I doing to longitude? Well, I'm going to set position of space now. Now space is basically the outer structure. It's the outer ring. It's the outer rim. Okay, it's the outer shell that you're creating. You're creating it from inside of you, but you're projecting from outside of you. So all this construct comes from inside you first. Now that process, longitude and latitude of what you're doing through your streaming. That puts you in position lines of gauging, or what you're doing through viewing of indicates and setting. That process you through advertising, or what you're doing in sending lines of travel. Okay, so let's say 6 feet long. 6 feet long. Okay, and let's see 12 feet wide. Okay, so that's what you're going to construct in your settings of space, which is inside you. Okay, interconception settings. Now it's much easier to keep yourself logged into space until you log out of space. Log into space, process your indication where you are in your mind, so that keeps you in a smooth transition flow. And then when you log out of space, everything's set up. It's much easier to see that in divine, you know exactly what you set up on Earth space that you construct inside, that you project outside of your Earth. And that puts in the same time frame, okay, in that positions, right? It's not different time frame, it's the same time frame. It's just space is an ongoing of creating, okay? That constantly keeps going and going and going and going, right? But when you're modifying that, when you time format, that's where it becomes set position of its Earth into 20 minutes in setting. So 20 minutes on Earth, okay, and that construct, you're creating lines of 20 hours of construct of 6 feet long and 12 feet wide, okay? So that's what you're creating, okay? That's what you're creating, okay? That's space, this is Earth, all right? Okay, so once you're done with that set position lines of setting, you got 20 minutes and ground centers of flux over 3 centers of travel. That has indicate lines of ground centers of set travel communications. Setting converts to settings embedding, process lines of position all levels. 3 indicate lines of zeros, 3 zeros, set lines of position of truth, process lines and set position of 4. Okay, but it's not false. It's not all false. So we have to understand how we're going to do this and how long it takes to get in position into the construct of the longitude and latitude and the streaming that you're doing in the bandwidth of you that indicates you through your webbing system, that processes you through light, and that processes you through dark coding. Now this helps you to identify your system when you come in your 50% of time frame in your brain capacity, okay? How fast does it take for you to create a construct of its longitude and latitude of streaming from 6 feet to 12 feet wide in set lines of travel, in direct and redirect and set lines of signal, okay? So that's how it processes in that positions. So once we get into that setting, okay, so 20 minutes, that sets lines of travels at 10, 15, and 20. After 20, you have to set a new time frame. That brings it back to 0 and set lines of travel, okay? So when you bring it back to 0, you go to the time frame again and you create a new frequency, which is a new program. So that program is now finished, it's done, okay? It goes back in your mind, imagination, right? In storage, in archive, or anything in its library that stores its information setting that puts you in process of communications, right? So you can bring that back out, but it's at a different frequency, okay? Now, if you want to lock it back in at the same lines, it's set between 6 feet to 12 feet wide, and that travels in that ground sublocation setting, you got a box to set position of 333 or 444 in a trifactor set position, right? So that's going back in set position operation, back in set lines of center operation, back in future adaptation of center operation lines of sequence and travel, okay? So there's so many ways to do the conversion setting and construct, but the information comes from inside that projects everything outside of its Earth, okay? Inside construct, outside provision of Earth, okay? That's where it comes 20 minutes on Earth that you send in time format, spending what you're creating in that settings, okay? So that's 20 hours in space that you created a construct from space itself. Now, when it platitudes, it comes to the Earth, you're projecting it outside, seeing it in real time. There's the running film strip, press play. Now you're watching it running on its operation system through space lines of anomaly, all through traveling, all through communication, all through direction. And now you see it rotating all at once, okay? So that's how you construct inside, and that's how you project outside, okay? Construct inside of space, project outside of its Earth, okay? So hopefully you get an understanding how to identify that position of its operation. That's going to help you a lot more, especially when you come to your capacities at 50%. 50% process directing the ground centers, what you do through information panel. Process indicates how the Earth works, how the powers work, and how space works in travel. Okay? Now, it's all indicated how you use your mind imagination that brings everything in that position. It's in calculations. So it's very important you understand that. So let's get into two lines of division. Box frame, this is you and your universe. And you're not bringing anything in. You're not bringing anything in image. But right there, you're bringing that in now. It's already brought in through the mind. So it's already gone through you, through pi, through communications, all levels, that sets position, all levels, and operation lines of ground, second lines of position, location, and measure of scale. You got through timeline already through communication, right? So this is already done. This is what you got to process through. And when you understand that, it's much easier to modify that position to its operation cycle. That helps you to understand how to communicate all that level and set lines of travel. That's indicating you that you already construct through the inference structure that's in your divine imprint in your design. Okay? That you modified through your simulation. How you created in your mind of imagination. Okay? So in that position lines of setting, information's inside. Okay? Comes in your betting cycles and how it travels. But it's all communication system, all through activation. Now, everything you have in the center operation is coming to you through attraction, like this, in a clocking square root, okay, in time frame, which is the astral projection of yourself. You're in the center, but everything comes to you inside, side, 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 side. Now you're creating a clocking foundation ground, okay? Travels all together, all in one. They go through pi, go through pi, go through pi. So each astral projection goes through time frame, timeline, time sequence, time calculation, time lines, time roots, all through operation. Travels all together in all line settings, right? So the more you get in resistance, the more you get off position. The more you get out of resistance, the more your fortitude, your longitude, and your latitudes are streaming into yin and yang that process you in position. I keep expanding in set lines of travel, going all in the same direction, all together. So there's so many ways of looking at this, okay? And the one thing you have to start identifying is your thought, action, emotions, and how fast you're going through brain capacity. Each thought is a connecting system to a line stream that puts position lines in center locations. So you got 3 wires of indication. That's one thought. You got 3 lines of indication. That's one action. And you got 3 lines of indication. That is one emotion. Okay? 3, 6, and 9. 3, 6, and 9, right there. Okay? Thought, action, emotions. Now, what you're doing with your thoughts, your brain capacity, where is it at in position and setting? It's always in the center, which is 50%. Anything below that, it's in an equilibrium of emotion. Now it's at 40%. That's 10% drop. That's 30%, 20%. Now, if it goes below 12% in set position, it goes to 144 flux of low spectrum of division. Okay? So it's very important you understand the 144 flux above and the 144 flux below. Okay? So it has a 12 above and has a 12 below. You start at 12, 24, 48, 72, 144. Set position 144, 72, 48, 24. Set position of 12, 12 lines of 24, 48, 72, 144 flux at a low spectrum, at a low division, of low intelligence that you're living in real time. That's the equilibrium of separation. You're separating your mind right now because you're below the 144, okay, which is outside in your cycles, not inside your position of balance. So now you're living outside of you, no longer inside of projection. That's where you separate your mind, imagination, and your programming. So I want to make it very well clear, always stay in brain capacity at 50% and 144 flux, okay? Above your system, 50% above, not below. And it's all levels how you use your modification grounds, your emotional system that puts you in flux of communication setting to your thoughts, actions, and emotions of 3, 6, 9. But you see them all working together in travel, going in the same direction. Embedding setting, box frame, box frame, box frame, right? So this is how it goes in the calculation ground lines, process line positions. Docking 1, docking 2, docking 3, docking 4, docking 1, docking 2, docking 3, docking 4, docking 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 setting line position locations. So that's 4, 8, that's 12 set lines of communication, right? So time centers equals lines of calculation 12, 24 clockings, 48 line scales, set communication lines of 72 computer framing into 144 flux. Above their system at 50% lines, indirect lines of capacity. Okay? Now, that's staying above the system. That's all above 50, right? So it's much easier to go through 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, right? So 50% is all based on how you see yourself in modification of frequency itself, and where it comes into Metric meters, metric scales, metric balance, metric operation line, calculates screen locations, how you information your bits, how you calculate and modify to cells, information lines, centers of travel, indicate lines, operation lines of travel, communication, high operation location and clocking, and foundation lines of grounds, operating location and signals that put you in an particular location system of the calculation lines of travel. So this helps you to identify yourself of what you're doing through calculation, how you're going through the mind, a modification setting to the equilibrium of balance that processes you in all levels of travel. Okay, at 369, right? Okay, so once again in collaboration line grounds, we come in this position next. Each thought, action, emotion. Okay, so one thought in frequency lines, right? So you take off the word, frequency lines of grounds, liquidize the system. Now it's no longer a thought, it's disintegrated location of dimensional line sail, the process location of seed pattern, process line position of pod. Of course, communication lines of position location the. Okay, let's go to position 3 centers of travel. And indicate lines of settings. We take out the beta waves, alpha beta, then we go to theta, then we go to mega. Set course center, zeta, gamma line, operation lines of meta, line course center, communication lines of travel. All right, so we take the, we go in position H and E, goes in the same directions of platform, right? So it goes in the same set position of bedding, comes in a holographic grid, set lines of operation. Okay? You apply to the position of the, sets all communication lines of balance. So that processes your settings, creates a solar sail. There it is, solar sail. Booyah, right? And when you create the solar sail, you create the platforms of your connection setting, your echo screens, directing lines of sonar, directing communication lines of ground lines, position of pantoms that process you in your proficiency, your efficacies, and your performance, how you come in position locations, your longitude and latitudes of streaming of what you're indicating through your bedding system, put you in lines of position lines of default location, longitude and latitude, processes that position location and travel. Now that indicates lines of grounds and operation lines of set course centers, communication and positions out through operation lines of set travel. It sets position of portals that go in center lines of communications and set lines of travel. Okay? And you indicate all lines of 4 lines of flux and screen lines of adaptation. So it's very powerful how your thoughts go in the same direction creates the solar sail or dimensional sail. Depending on how fast you're going through megahertz, megawatts, megajoints, calculate and modify anything on the travel. It's all through imagination line position, the core lines, core set, convergence system, all through setting. Calculate, modify line communication setting, all through compass, rulers, lines, operation lines, and set travel. So it basically helps you identify your settings and knowing exactly that you're in position location. So 50% in a car is 0. Okay, when you start the car, you're now at 10. Now you're at 20. Now you're at 40. Now you're at 60. Now you're 80. Okay, now you're at 120. Okay, so that's 120 clicks in set position, right? So you got to understand how that works. In 120 clicks, that process line position location setting, that puts position locations. If I go through 140 clicks, okay, that's over 200 miles an hour. So we have to understand how this all works in our system, how we modify our own setting because it's going through the mind adaptation, how the brain works. The brain works on its own operation, but you have to understand the brain of you. That indicates how you go through your own flux and set position. This has nothing to do with driving a car. It's knowing how to mind your system, how to control the self inside the mind itself that controls the brain of capacity of itself. That modifies everything of itself, its control system. Self-modulator to its own position of its own console that has its own navigation system that navigates everything to its own aviation system to its aviator locations. All through travel, all through position, all through operation. All through tango, all through flux. Process and position of foxtrot. Directing lines of Papa uniform, locations at Hotel Golf. So you have to truly understand how to balance out locations, all right? So that's what you have to understand through moderation, knowing how fast your brain is going through a thought, right? And how fast is it going through an action, through emotion, because you're automatically creating a simulator to a simulation. And that's what we have to indicate through is basically slowing down our space so we can understand what we're engaging, what we're reviewing, and how many thoughts are going this way, how many actions are going this way, how many emotions are going this way. Thoughts, action, emotions have to be going in the same direction because it creates a solar sail. And when it creates a solar sail, it's much easier to go through its travel, a transition, a flow. So it's processing how the brain works. Let's get in position, location, line connections, longitude, latitude, streaming lines and networks, neuropathological settings, process here, directing here, operation here, set calculation line, ground center, sparring wires and travel, all through your brain, okay? And that's a central setting correlations of balance. Cerebral cortex, cerebral fluid, directing line, ground centers, line sequence, lines of panel, indicate lines of grounds. Coloration line comes in, security lines of panels, overline signals, out signals and location lines, and high center position. Okay, going through a mapping line, how you operationalize the set travel communication convergence location and cycle. Okay, setting communication setting. So it's firing, wiring, go through all directions all at once through a sprinkler, and that's where your thoughts go. But it goes in a correlation setting to a mapping center through pi. So it doesn't get confused where it's going through its anomaly. It knows where it's going through, it indicates the system as it constantly goes through a constant line centers into constellation system to its alignment that processes you through all calculate and modify how you got through aerodynamics that processes you in position lines of travel. Okay, then you position in blue. Around this cycle, so I generated the screen. Outside signal, outside of space, inside lines of travel, indirect lines of communication. Okay? All right. So it's all lines of motion, lines of traction now. Now we're indicating lines. We don't have to go orange, we can go green, because that's where you're indicating through. This is motion lines of travel that you're processing through. Reds of indication of security, blue lines of protection, and greens lines of high operation lines of sequence. Okay? Sets lines of communication lines of balance. So the conceptual setting of the seed pod process indicates in which you're going through the metric meters of travel. Now that indicates lines of energetic flow pattern that process you in position how you go through your neural networks, your neural links, and location neuropathies. That processes your mind, adaptation of flux, that processes your location overlapping your system that puts you in your position lines of customized line, core centers, and calculation line, ground centers, how you see yourself in line communication webbing system, location your handlers. They catch you indication lines of balance, center lines of travel, direct lines of grounds. Inside your simulation ground communication. Inside your simulation. Okay? Very powerful stuff in set lines and screens. Inside calculations. Okay? Your highways. Okay? So it's all through string theory, isn't it? All through travel. Okay? But it's amazing when it lights up and it goes in all directions all at once. It becomes its own sprinkler because the thoughts, action, emotions. What are you creating in that position? You're creating a Fibonacci. Okay, that's where you're creating the Fibonacci when your thoughts, action, emotions come together. And when they come together, they create a clocking system and position lines of setting. Set calculation lines, 12, line position, all those are 2 over attractions. Set calculation lines of position of 3, set position of 4 and 5 and 6. All right, sets calculation line, ground centers, okay. Put our outside line, position, location, line, settings, location. It sets position lines of setting, so it's 12, 25. And set travel. Okay. So that's how a brain converts a setting to a clocking system. Now you have to truly understand how to modify your thoughts first. Create the solar sail and lines of travel. Okay? Set the platforms and set lines of equilibrium. Balance communication lines of flux. Process lines indicates a setting through a boardwalk location to a holographic grid. Then you create the location grid that protects operation of your setting all through travel. That indicates position lines of setting. Then you create the communication Merkaba, test circuit, and travels, and position lines of Merkaba, course centers of the test or location setting calculation. So once you set up the clocking system, it's much easier the brain to convert the settings of seconds, minutes, and hours. So that puts all position lines of travel. Then you come into 50% in the grounds, 50% in the atmosphere, okay, and then 50% in the line settings, location, and travel. So we got 4 lines of panels. Set position 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. It's 3, 6, 9, 12. Set position lines of setting. Set position over 3. Set correlation setting, 13, 14, 15. 15 grounds, high centers equals lines of higher self, travels to point lines of graph. Directing ground centers, 13 over line, position avatar, set conversion setting. So it's much easier to keep yourself logged into space. And when you're logging out of space, you're basically in that position location that you created the construct inside lines of position of space itself. Then you modify the time frame, time format, there it's set position lines of setting. So that puts lines of position lines of 15 line centers in screen adaptation and processing. 15 minutes on Earth, and higher self travels into position of its astral projection of itself. The astral projection of itself processes lines of 15 hours of construct into models and prototype that it created in its mind of space itself into galaxy alignment and travel. Okay? So it's very powerful how you indicate that in set lines of screens, but you understand how to set up the metric meters and scale of the balance to a clocking system inside the brain itself, because that's where it sets the time, is the eye lines. Your eye sequence comes in time frame. Circulation system of center operation. Okay? And set calculations. Right? All through flux, right? So it's 12. Set position 30. Set course centers, 8 line center, 8 line centers. So it's 12:40. Okay? PM. Inside the eye. Okay? 12:40 inside the eye. Right? Now, 12:40 line centers. That process in space is what? Now you're talking about AM or PM, doesn't matter. What matters is how you indicate position, what you're doing through time flux, what you're doing through body capacitor, and what you're doing through all formation setting that puts you in a process in set directions. But if you look really close, you can see a solar sail inside the eye itself. See? Solar sail, right? So your processing indication setting, operate lines of clock and center. There's the face recognition inside the eye. Say hello. There's your eye. There's your intelligence. There's your pattern. There's your face recognition. And all levels of force recognition of time frame. So the eye has a sequence on its own platforms as that position. Living in the eye line's core centers converts a system of 4 centers of travel of communication setting, the longitudes or latitudes of streaming. Indicates lines of flux, process line position, and work about testing or tension inside the eye. Okay? So it's important you understand the solar sail. Its thoughts, acts, and motions have to be going in the same direction, and a force line and yin and yang going in the same directions of locations in the panel's operation affinity 8. Okay? So they can process the percentage of yin and yang of communication. Okay? That's how it works in travel. All right. So I think we're catching on right now how this really processes our settings. It's much easier to drive a car and see it, but it's much harder to identify that, how a brain sees you driving. Try to imagine that. How does the brain see you driving? So it's the driving force that indicates the overriding system, which is basically, it's your DOS, it's your directing operating system. It's your data operating cycle. You have to understand how to see that in modification, how to use that in the console. Classification gradings is very important to understand that through your system, how to go through your highways that indicates that everything you've been through, which is your academies, through space-time operations and space discoveries. Now this is going to help you identify how to get in position, how to time your flux, your formats in that position, how you modify everything inside is you create a construct, okay? How you're projecting everything outside, which is its Earth, the time frame. So that's how everything operates in your VR system. Now, for you to understand that identification setting, if you're not going to bring anybody in, they're in their own universe of their own time. Okay? Until you bring in the image, they're not there. They're living in their own system. But how you bring them in is through morphing and teleportation. They travel inside your mind and they travel outside frame in projection. That's how you see them in set position of operation, guys. Okay? Time frame calculation lines of Earth, time calculation lines of power, and time calculation lines of space, and time calculation lines of all lines set and lines of position of calculation. All right? So it's important you understand, always keep yourself logged into space. It's much easier to modify how you consequence the constructs. It's much easier to identify that because you're coming out of the memories of no memories of just always who you are, of indications. Knowing how to operate yourself, how to construct yourself, how to build things inside yourself through its setting, okay? So 15 minutes is 15 hours, okay? 15 hours comes into 15 million, all right? 15 million comes into decades. Decades becomes into millenniums, all through 15, right? And it's all through time format. Everything is a film strip that you're running through in set lines of travel, okay? So it's important how you indicate that. It's all levels of you, how you see your vision and cortex, how you want to see the Earth in programming, how you want to see the powers in programming, how you want to see the atmosphere in programming, how you want to see your highways, how you want to see your skylines, how you want to see your sky grids, and how you want to see your Skynet. It all depends on you, not anybody else. But how to operate yourself is from inside, a construct. You're building, okay, a construct. You're building an infrastructure inside of you, of space, okay? That process in the hours that goes into the set position, all right? And you're just basically putting that from inside and you're projecting outside how you see it in real time, running a film strip, which is 15 or 20 minutes, that you have a conversation that you brought in through programming. Now you brought them into their universe, okay, to your universe, okay? So that's arrival. And when they're finished, they depart, which means they're back inside your mind. Now you can put that in storage, or you can put that in anywhere you want to be in an archive or anything in its library and have it on standby. These are the things that you can do when you're sent out to process that through indications and seeing all levels, nothing but a folder that you can put in position of, right? A folder itself, travel. And everything you have in set position is on standby, okay? Everything you create is on standby. But you always got to leave yourself with empty space. Okay, running ops, that position lines of the caches, always have those empty Set lines of travel. So the more you empty yourself, the more you can modify yourself how to construct bigger levels of longitude and latitude that you can do through streaming, that you're constructing in your mind. Okay, that's fabricating you in space. Okay, how you come in that position, time levels, high centers, high communication convergence system, all through flux, all through time, all through format, all lines of operation in real time. All right. So let's go into space line. I'm still logging into space. I haven't logged out yet. Okay, space itself is directing into triangulation flux. So this is where you start talking to yourself. Don't think about it, just talk. And when you stop thinking about it, you're just talking that's already done through its equation. The mind's already set it up through the brain. So the brain needs to have a full alignment with you first, because it doesn't need to indicate itself. It already does everything already through the astral projection. It's already gone through time already. So that's space itself. That's identified everything that's done through its earth, through astral projection. And that's 15 minutes and 15 hours in construct of creating. Okay? Now, that's 2 film strips into 1 cycle. Okay? Running all together. In 1 frame, in 1 box frame, in 1 window frame, guys. That's all it is, working together. All right? Okay. So, space itself is the operation of itself. Now, indicates lines of grounds, high center, position, location, setting. So, again, it has to do with the longitude and the latitude of your doing. Okay, but how long you're constructing, how long is it going to take from here to here through pi? Okay, and they break down the layers. How long are you going to create the film strip, right, in space? Are you creating a pixelation graph? Are you creating a holographic city? What are you creating in latitude and longitude? There's the Colosseum, all right? So, space and line center location setting, so it's not 15 hours, it's going to take 15 million years. 15 million years to create it in real time. That's space, that's, okay? So that processes you in position lines of setting, so that's 150 hours. 150 hours is that travel, okay? There's the Colosseum in real time that's projecting, that you're seeing, it's that calculation, right? So you spend in 150 hours. It took 15 million years to create the Colosseum of longitude, latitude, okay? And whoever you bring in is all through construct 2, through programming, okay? So let's say you got 75,000 audience inside the system that you also brought in through travel, okay, in real time, right? But it's construct here first. Then it comes into projection outside your Earth, right? Provision of space, outside set position you're setting at Earth, all right? That's where you see everything in real time, all right? So when those 150 hours goes in that position, in that tractions, it puts on day, month, and years, doesn't matter. The time clocking leaves because everybody gets up, it's done, it's finished, it's over. So as you look back in that position, it's not there, right? But if you want to bring it back in, it's at a different frequency now, which is a different construct. It's never at the same frequency. So that's what you have to be cautiously of, what you're doing through programming, and how many hours are you going to be indicating that you're creating through construct that you're modifying through inside of you as space. Okay? It's constructing in space that modifies how you project everything outer space, which is Earth. And that's where it comes into 15 minutes and 15 hours in space to create, right? But that's all it is. That's the balance. So you're setting 50 minutes and you're locking in a time frame. And when that time frame finishes, it disappears, okay? And goes back in your mind, imagination, right? Which puts you in the storage unit, right? So it's really interesting how you see the space and Earth at the same time now, a projection that you brought in through longitude, latitudes, all through streaming, creating a Colosseum. How long it took you to create that, and how long you see it in 150 hours in its Colosseum of itself, in that position. That's where it processes the day, month, and years, all right? Sometimes, websites take 2 years to create, right? Sometimes you get a writer's block, something that, it just simplifies everything. You have to go outside to release your mind and open up the concept, open up more of your imagination. Then you start to realize what you're in position of, right? I mean, you can have a blocker's mind, that's totally fine, right? But you're always indicating what you already know already. So you can have a blocker's mind because it's already processed and already done already here. And now you have to understand the processing here and understanding through your body of alignment, knowing that everything's done through the equation, through the astral projection, that's already in calculation modified through system all through operation. So it's much easier that you guys identify yourself, know exactly how to get in positions, how you construct and build inside, okay, of space. That puts you in position hours, okay? Now, even seconds. Seconds in setting is minutes in space, okay? But the thoughts, action, emotions have to be going in the same direction so you can create a solar sail, okay? And it's much easier to modify that, right? Especially if your thoughts are going 75,000 per second per square. I mean, that's just, whoa. Thoughts are going, that's very fast. And that's just 3,000 line centers into 6,000 line locations, into 9 rotations, into 12 location centers, into 24 clocking, okay? Once you get to 24, you're automatically clocking. So that provisions here, dimension, 1 layer, 2 layer, 3 layer, 4 layer, 5 layers in set lines of travel, okay? That you're indicating in set position. So it could be 3,000 square roots, square settings, seconds on minutes, seconds on pi, seconds correlation, second in travels, second direction, second location, line condition setting, convergent system, all through set position of operation setting. Okay? And that's all through brain capacity and set travel. Okay? So remember, there's 3 grounds of capacity. Okay? Starting with 3. 3 equals lines of capacity. Okay? Where you are in percentage of your minds. In your bodies, your equilibriums, your balance, your relations, your travels, your directions, your locations. Okay? And 50% is always 0 gravity. Okay? Which is 144 flux. Okay? In that position. Okay? So I want to make it very well clear what you guys are doing. When you're going below 144, you're creating a dimensional sail, but the sail is going backwards. It's going in backdating option. It's going backwards. Now you're separating through equal. You're separating from above, and you're separating from below. You're separating your mind, imagination. So everything you set up through programming is going to go back in time. Okay? It correlates, communicates, set, converts the system, creating the matrix. Okay? So you won't know what direction you're going in that position as operation thoughts, action, and motion, all to come back in lines of interference that get you in position of quantum entanglement with yourself and each other. You won't know directions you're going through a clocking system. Remember, once you get into 24, you're automatically in alignment with yourself, the constellation that puts you in the process, how you use your Orion's belt. Your Orion's belt is not 3. Your Orion's belt is 4 and 5 in set lines of setting in sequence. Because your hand is a 5 formation system, which is nothing of a tree of formation lines of grounds. 5. Okay? Your hand is 5, not 3. You see 3, you see 5, right? So that indicates your hand informations, right? There's your hand. Okay? That's your hand. There you go. Right? That's your hand seeing yourself as a tree. That's your hand seeing yourself as its earth of rotation. Right? Holding your earth. Right? It's 5. So indicating 3 is flux. Indicating 4 is travel. Indicating 5 is operation. So you have to truly understand how this all works in set lines of operation location of its roots. That platitudes, you, at set position of its operation cycle. Height generates everything that you process in position because you're constantly constructing everything inside of space that you are projecting outside your Earth. And that's how you run your film strips and press play in the simulation. See what you've done through observation. Change the format. Change the structure. Take it out through its equation. Release the communications. Direct inline settings. Take them out through equations. Put them in another simulation game. These are things you can do once you understand how to use your mind of operation to you, that you are in position as projections that you brought in. Knowing the characters and the players and the simulation of the game itself that modifies you in set position operation. Traveling all together all at once. Okay? But that's what it is through Orion's belt. Okay? It's not a 3 centers calculation, it's a 5. Because you got 5 fingers. You got 4 fingers and 1 thumb, right? But you don't really have. See, it looks that way, doesn't it? If I indicate settings and travels, and I indicate that I actually want to see my finger move through this cycle, I don't look at my hand. I look at you guys, right? And I can see another finger in set position of operation. Going through the travels, going back and forth, right? So it's indicating here, and it travels to here through indications, right? There's another finger. Okay, it's another finger. It's no longer a thumb. So remember, the more the mind you can change, the more you can change the construct inside. That modifies everything you project outside of your real time. So it's all in configuration setting. How long are you setting it up through time format? How long do you want to have it in provision through operation? How long do you want to have it living in your operation cycle? How long do you want it living in your sim? And track location of clocking, right? 12 lines of settings, 24 scales, 48 lines of measure, 72 computer, and 144 flux. That's how you indicate everything in travel in set calculation. Okay? So it's important you understand that. Always stay 144 above. Okay? Always 144 above. But again, there's always 144 below. Okay, so that's 12 below, and that's 12 above. It's that traction. Okay? Live in the cycles 144 above in triangulation, or live in the 144 flux in box frames and track calculations in ground centered sequence. So you got 12 levels, lines of settings, projection of the mind. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, 12 there, right? Then we got 12 in the bottom, which is at 144 flux, but it's low spectrum now, divisions of dimensions of space and time through frequency. Okay, so that's how it is. That's how it's set up. Okay, so that's how this works. That's how all this works. So if you understand how this all works in a triangulation, then you understand your boxing frames and what you're doing in travel of communication. Okay, and window frames, correlations frames, track communication settings, all three directions. That gets you in position of balance. Okay, knowing how to modify your 50% in your brain capacity from the grounds up. Okay, so that's 50, 50, 50. So that's 555. Triangulation of box frames and travel communications and convergence at any time frame. Okay, and then you got 50 above. You got 50 below. Okay, 4 sentences travel, right? So that's 5, 5, 5, 5, right? So 5 set lines of signals. So that's 5, 5 over lines of space. And that's 5, 5, 5 lines of time and set travel. Set converges space, set converges time set calculations. Converting the line centers operates lines of flux and travels in point lines of graph into flux capacitor. So the process line in position triangulation above and triangulation below comes in as flux capacitor balance in equilibrium locations of a clocking system of zero gravity of phase recognition. Okay? So that's what we have to indicate through. That's how we balance what's above and what's below, right? All through flux, all through capacity, all through grounds, powers, and atmospheres, right? 3 grounds of setting and sequence of 3, 6, and 9. That puts you in platforms, how you go through a clocking system, all through operation and set lines of travel, through a dimensional and solar cell. Okay? Working together in conformation, right? So it's important you understand how to indicate that, because this helps you to get into how to see all those, that's all construct inside yourself. So you're building yourself inside, but everything's already built here. Now you just have to modify the body and astral projection. Now it's much easier to go through that through the percentage of set of operation. See, that's what it is, guys. Now if you look at the percentage, you can see what's going on. And if you set the affinity 8, you can see what's going on yin and yang. And that's how it works, yin and yang, right? So you got the 6 and you got the 9, process at position, right? Indicate the setting grounds. So the clocking system sets all position lines of travel. It sets the crop circle, all through operation in a clocking system and settings. Discharge and dispatch, okay? That's position line setting. That can be modified to circulation and its rotation lines of setting. The process U indicates in setting, all through flux and set calculations. All right, there you go. All set and done, all right? So that's how you rotate everything all at once in one direction, right? One direction, yin and yang. Yin yang, guys. Yin yang. There's no separation of that. Yin and yang is processed in inner cycles of construct. Yang is the outside of construct. So you got the inner shell to the outer shell, projection, operation, signals, sets, operation, set, calculating ground centers, and position lines of travel. Okay? So there you go. So there's a lot being said here that's being understood. Now, the more you process this, the more you understand what's going on through astral projections of you. And it's much easier for you to modify these things, how to use that percentage in time frame, time format, time calculation times pi. So in that position, you know exactly when you come to that settings, you know exactly where you are in capacity of the brain. Are you in interstellar mode? Are you in hyper mode? Are you in hyperdrive? Okay, where are you? Are you in a kick drive? Where'd you go? Are you in mocking? What's going on? Where's your position line setting? Where's your calculation ground centers? Where's the communication conversion system? Where's the travel records? Where's your data? Where's the process calculation? Everything is traveling, okay? So what you have to understand is the alignment now, okay? Because the brain is going to come back to its own alignment inside of you. That's right. That's the awakening system, the dream that's going to wake up the symbiote. And when the symbiote wakes up, everything comes in balance and starts to look around and say, oh my gosh, I got to get out of this, all right? So it automatically is already done through its equation. You're just going to go through the mind adaptation in a 12 projector, times frames, set position 24 cycles, set core centers and 24 stargates, open all through channel, okay? 5 progression lines of cycles, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of flux. 5, 5, 5, set position, so everything's going to be 3, 3, 3, everything's going to be 2, 2, 2, everything's going to be 1, 1, 1, equals 1, okay? That's where we're going to start. Everything's going to be 6, 6, 6, 6, everything's going to be 7, 7, 7, 7, everything's going to be 8, 8, 8, 9, 9, 9, 10, 10, 10, 11, 11, 11, 12, 12, 12. That's where we're all going to be. That's where we're all going to be. All through open portals and stargates and screen adaptation of flux. Okay? Everything's going to be open. Everything's going to be open book. And that's where we have to get mind control of what we're doing in the settings of our thoughts, action, emotions. Okay, that process you in that position location where you can no longer put yourself in lines of settings, living the intelligence of existing, no more lines of communication of this. Okay? So hopefully that identified your set lines of travel, indicates lines of communication setting, indicate lines of flux. So we're processing position lines as travels. Tomorrow in sequence, we got all communication grounds into your preparations, into your test on Friday in screen lines. Okay? Adios.